Thank you, Madam Speaker. I'd like to interrogate the maker of the bill.
Will the maker of the bill stand for a brief interrogation? Representative Bloom will do so. You may begin.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Representative Bloom, the first question I'd like to ask is just a general question. I've had a lot of conversations with individuals, well-meaning individuals, on both sides of this issue. Can you tell me, in your opinion, why you think this legislation is necessary to move from a seniority-based evaluation for economic furloughs over to one based on teacher evaluations?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. While there are many reasons, probably the most fundamental reason why it's important to shift from a purely seniority-based system of considering what would happen if there is an economic furlough to one based on performance of the individual teachers is to make sure that the very best teachers remain in the classroom and that excellent teachers who just happen to be newer teachers aren't eliminated from the opportunity to teach our kids in our Pennsylvania classrooms. It's a question of fairness, not only for the teachers who are working hard and achieving excellent results, but also for our kids in those classrooms.
And a concern that's been raised to me is that if we shift to a system based on evaluations such as the one you're proposing, is that there is an opportunity for evaluators or administrators to include their bias against a teacher or to eliminate teachers who are higher earning and higher salaried individuals who have more seniority. Can you answer that charge?
Sure. The system that we're proposing in House Bill 805, first of all, specifically prohibits any sort of a furlough decision from being based on the compensation of a teacher. So salary and benefits of a teacher will have no bearing whatsoever in whatever decision might be made. And certainly it's more than just arguable that the system we're discussing is much more objective than the former system that was entirely subjective. So again, basic fairness for the teachers is key here.
Okay. Another concern that I've heard is that teachers would be interested in only teaching the best students, and that students who are harder to teach would not receive the best teachers in their classroom. Can you please answer that charge?
Mr. Speaker, the component of the evaluation system, which has, again, already been established, it was established back in 2012 after being piloted for a number of years, it looks at 15% of teacher-level data. In that 15%, there are multiple components of consideration. Two of the key ones are the actual growth of the students, their progress in moving forward. So whether it's a student who's starting at point A or point B, what's being measured is that student's progress, not where they end up. So what we're looking for is teachers that are making progress in helping their kids move forward in their educational process. Likewise, the IEP is a key component of that 15%. So we're looking at that particular student who may need special help, special assistance in the classroom. They're going to have an IEP, and we're going to evaluate that piece of the teacher's evaluation component, classroom component, based on that student's progress toward their IEP. So there's certainly not going to be a disincentive for a teacher to take on the more challenging students.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The next concern that has been raised to me regards building level data being included in the evaluations and the fairness of that measurement being built into the teacher evaluations. Can you please respond to that issue?
Again, similar to the 15...
Madam Speaker.
Would you suspend, please? And yes, sir, for what purpose?
A point of order, Madam Speaker. As I understand it, the purpose of interrogation is to ask questions when you don't know the answer. And I think it's clear from this whole line of questioning right here that the answer is clear, that it is a rehearsed interrogation, that the person who is asking the question already knows the answers to the questions, therefore it's improper interrogation.
And certainly a fair comment has been made. So if the gentleman would just ask questions to which he really doesn't know the answer. And I understand, sir, that you were doing something of what constituents asked to you, but perhaps we could focus it that if you were able to give the constituent a reasonable answer, and it was right, you know the answer, and move to those for which you really don't, you're not sure.
Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you.
Thank you. And I would just like to say that, you know, if the questions I were asking had objective answers to them, I think it would be reasonable to assume that I might know the answers, but I'm really looking for a subjective opinion of the maker of the legislation, and I think it's reasonable to be asking such questions because I don't know his opinion on the legislation.
Gentlemen, suspend, please.
Will you continue his interrogation with Representative?
Please continue your interrogation with Representative Bloom, but if I might, with a gesture, let's stick a little closer to what's really going on. Would greatly appreciate that, sir.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. The final question I have is a concern that was raised to me about the impact of poverty that a student has in their home life and how that would affect the teacher evaluations and the scores that they receive on tests. Do you think that poverty is a factor that correlates to scores and would negatively impact a teacher's fair evaluation?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. No, I do not. Under the system as proposed, the individual school district is evaluated based on its own data. So we're not under the system comparing a very wealthy school district with a school district that's struggling with poverty. So there's not a skewing of the data or an unfair comparison between students who may have more preparation in their background compared to students who don't have that advantage. The other key is that under the existing system, where the last in, first out system of layoffs, there's a disproportionate negative impact on the school districts in particular that struggle with poverty. That's where we're seeing the highest frequency of layoffs of teachers. And again, these could be new teachers who happen to be excellent teachers, but they're being laid off and depriving the students in those schools who are the most in need of a good teacher from having that opportunity. So I think, if anything, this counteracts some of the effects of poverty, and it certainly balances and is fair to school districts that are dealing with all different sorts of socioeconomic situations. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for your responses. And Madam Speaker, I appreciate the opportunity to get answers to all of these questions. Thank you.